something that has affected the entire dynamic and scope of online play, and for better or for worse, is something that has come across to now all genres of video gaming. From fighting to first-person shooters to role-playing and even strategy games in the form of patches. Buffs and nerfs are a true reflection of modern gaming, and it's something that can divide many players on the concept. One of the first documentations of buffs and nerfs in relation to video games, either increasing or lowering the stats of anything, was back in 2003. And from there, it's been something that's influenced all of gaming. Why is this such an important aspect of modern gaming? Why do so many have no choice but to pay attention to the concept? A good argument by some is that the concept of buffs and nerfs relates to the modern aspect of casual gaming. It's also been said that the entire concept of buffs and nerfs were a direct reaction to how people compete against one another during online play, no matter what the said online play is. In terms of buffs and nerfs, for modern first-person shooting is Overwatch, when it was aimed towards more casual players, and the dynamics of the game had it that even if you were more skilled than your opponent in terms of experience, the game aspects would keep it as fair as possible. Did it work? Not necessarily, but that's another discussion entirely. The terms teabagging, camping, saute, and other titles for methods of play or feelings as a result of playing, so it can also be said that these terms was another result of buffs and nerfs. Is it unfair? Yes. Is there anything that players can do to really avoid such conduct whenever they play a first-person shooter online? No. Separately, in terms of nerfs and buffs for fighting games, it can already be said that Street Fighter V is the prototype for nerfs and buffs. With the lacking reception to the game, Capcom was constantly going back and forth, strengthening and weakening either characters or their set attacks. Nearly everyone on the roster had been affected more than once, and none of the fans were happy with anything that came out of it. The game overall isn't much enjoyable for a good amount of people because they would need to change the way they played to make up for the differences that the character gives you with their own approach to gaming. Sometimes it means you might have to change your approach, and as a result of this, it was not always for the best of outcomes. There was a time in video game history when a game was made, that was it. Nothing more was done to it or could be done to it. Nothing was tweaked or changed after the said release. And as mentioned before, this was for better or for worse. It was also an aspect of the technology available at the time, but also to the individual player's own skill with relation to the game that they might have played. With the concept of casual video games, the game dynamics are set lower so players can do much more without effort or skill. Hence, no real investment with playing as it used to be. This is why some modern games have such high levels of complaints with online functions. Of course, if a player was skilled, then they would dominate the said game. And that was something that other players had to deal with. There were never any real complaints about skill levels with players until buffs or nerfs, which were arguably originally just game adjustments, naturally meant later on that a player's skill and what they could do or not do in the said game as a result of skill or lack of skill were adjusted. Of course, each and every person plays different. What one player might do in terms of how they play with a game, regardless of genre, might be different from another, and that's where the complaints are. A logical aspect of responding to complaints is to just adapt, as some might say, or change to suit the new situation. Of course, it does seem logical, but hypothetically, once players have adapted to the situation, and then that said situation will just change, and everything will just continue to repeat itself. It's now impossible to go back to how games were before the concepts of buffs and nerfs were implemented in terms of errors or skill, but to try and adopt and simply deal with it, because this is how modern gaming is. All modern games now will have some aspects of nerfs and buffs. The only thing left to do is keep playing or to not.